What's up, Christ-centered mental health community? This is me, David Lee Chu Sarche, and Joseph McDermott here for our weekly podcast of Christian Schizo Rants, where it's two Christians with schizophrenia talk about controversial topics that have to do with mental health, faith in mental health. Before we get started on this show, we have a quick announcement for those of you that are new to the channel. Please check out the Christ-Centered Mental Health Ministry website. It's www.christcenteredmentalhealth.net. There you can see our statement of faith. You can check out the On Faith and Mental Health blog. You can check out the Christ Center Mental Health Ministry bookstore. You can see how to contact me or someone on the team for 24-hour peer support. And you can find out how to support the ministry via Patreon, Venmo, or Cash App. All right, so how you doing today, Joe?
Pretty good.
That's good. Is there any topics you want to talk about before we get into my topics?
Well, since Mother's Day is coming up, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there.
Yeah, happy Mother's Day to the mothers. Oh, and also, this is Mental Health Awareness Month. So, in honor of Mental Health Awareness Month, I want us both to mention 3 things that we like to do to help us cope with our mental health.
3 things.
Yeah.
Well, one thing is leisure time. I like to relax. I like to, whether it's going on dates would be one. Another thing would be staying home and playing video games. It's another thing. I've seen studies of how video games and people with mental illness, it helps us cope with life pretty much, very well. And another thing would be like going to the either restaurants or the mall, like little strip malls and stuff like that. Me and my wife like to go out a lot, so just those 3 things I would say.
Yeah, that's cool. I think the 3 things I like to do to help me cope with my mental health: I like to read. I read a whole lot. I like to write, and then I like to watch movies with my wife. Watch movies and TV shows.
There you go.
Yeah. All right, so the first topic I had in mind for us to talk about was I wanted us to talk about how, I wanted us to give encouragement to people, saying just because they have a mental illness, they shouldn't let their mental illness prevent them from living life.
Right.
Because a lot of people with mental illness, they think that's the end of the world and that's the worst thing that could ever happen to them, and they just give up on life. And you and me are prime examples of mental illness is not the end of the world. You can live a fulfilling life even though you have a mental illness.
I'll look at it this way. Do you want to be like everybody else, really? Like, look at the state of how the world is. Do you want to be like everybody else? When you have a mental illness, it makes you a unique person within unique people, so
Yeah.
it's being schizoaffected with ADD, my mind is just a lot different than most people. And but I like being different because when I see the average person, it's like, I might be like, have a mental disorder, but when I see society, that's what's insane to me. Like what's going on right now, it's like,
Yeah, I like to say that even though I have schizoaffective disorder, I think society is crazier than me.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, we got people that castrate their children nowadays over a delusional fad of a lie.
Exactly.
We got people.
Oh no. I don't know what happened to Joe. Like, he just disappeared. Oh. You there?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah.
But I guess someone doesn't like what I'm saying or something. But
Yeah.
but anyways, the world is it's in a bad shape right now, and
Yeah.
I try as a Christian to be salt in a light in the world, and like, even though I'm not perfect, I try to be generous to the homeless and whatnot, and people that are mentally ill. I gravitate toward people like that because I like to help out people that are in need. So like,
Yeah.
it's like, I know what it's like to be in need, and like, no one helped me too much, in my life. So I like to give out a helping hand when I can.
It's interesting, like you and me both have come to the conclusion that our mental illnesses are a gift from God. Because I know with me, I have schizoaffective disorder and separation anxiety, and my separation anxiety has caused me to do more for my relationship with my wife, like 'cause I feel like I'm closer to her because of my separation anxiety. And then my schizoaffective disorder kind of helps me to not trust what the media tells me. It helps me to be more compassionate towards other people who are suffering with mental illnesses or even physical illnesses. So I see mental illness as a gift from God.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's
Definitely a
definitely
correlation or a connection between compassion and people with mental illness, like because not saying that we're all compassionate. I've met some mentally ill people that were bad news, brother. But
yeah, so have I, yeah.
but
Yeah, I wouldn't trust just everyone with mental illness because
yeah,
there's a lot of us that are scumbags.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but for the most part, most of us with mental illness tend to be more compassionate than regular people, I think.
Yeah,
Because a
not
lot
trying
of
to
regular
brag.
yeah, we're not trying to brag or anything, but a lot of regular people tend to be like I don't know, kind of like into themselves, and they oh, Chuck Ward came on. He said hello from New Jersey. Hi, Chuck. But
Go.
yeah, a lot of regular people like they tend to be so into themselves that they don't really care about other people.
Yeah,
That actually goes along with what I've been saying. Like a lot of unbelievers, they don't know how to love people. They like the Bible says they're without love. Like they hate God and they hate their neighbor. So that's why I don't trust a lot of regular non mentally ill people because especially if they're not Christian, I don't trust them at all.
yeah,
Like Christians I trust, but I don't trust non-Christians at all.
yeah, and you can't trust every Christian out there either because a lot of us can be extremely cold hearted ourselves and stuff, and like have
Yeah, that's
like
true.
a holier than thou type of attitude, and so, but
Yeah,
I met like the best people I met in my life though they did love the Lord and they were like the kindest and
yeah.
most people I met.
Exactly. The best people I met in my life have been people who profess the name of Christ, and a lot of the people, a lot of the best people I met were people that have their own struggles with mental illness.
Yeah,
Like, so, like going back to the topic, like if you have a mental illness, just know no, it's not the end of the world, and there are other people who can identify with you. You're not alone in your struggle. Like I seen, according to NAMI, 20% over 20% of the population has a mental illness, but I've seen other estimates that say it's over 50%. So, in other words, over 20 to 50% of the population has a mental illness. So, if you have a mental illness, you're in good company. Like you're not alone.
yeah, and this has no bearing on whether you're a decent human being or not because if you have a good heart, so to speak, and you care for people, like your mental illness has nothing to do with that. It might enhance that stuff, if anything. So
Yeah,
don't think you're going to
exactly.
be some kind of psychotic, evil person just because you might be have some mental illness. So
Yeah, like the media doesn't do a good job at portraying people's mental illness. But like, I mean, there's some movies out there that do, but like I mean, the media is getting better at portraying mental illness. But like back in the day, the media was horrible at portraying it. They always portrayed us as psychotic killers or weird people. Like, so I can understand why someone growing up that gets diagnosed with mental illness, why they think that they're not okay but you are okay. If you have a mental illness, you're in good company. Like, you're not a freak of nature or anything like that.
but your favorite movie is The Beautiful Mind. A
Oh, I
Beautiful.
love A Beautiful Mind. I love A Beautiful Mind. Actually, yeah, like I love A Beautiful Mind. That's a good movie. That's actually portrays people with mental illness in a positive light, actually, because and that's based on a true story.
Yeah,
John Nash, he was a genius.
yeah,
Like and he like I think that portrays mental illness in a positive. And then like there's this movie called Words on Bathroom Walls. It's about a high school kid that has schizophrenia. I thought that was a good movie too. Like, and that high school kid, he was like big on culinary arts, so he was like all like a master cook. Like that's another thing. Like a lot of movies based on mental illness like to portray people with mental illness as having like a certain skill that they're really good at. Like,
yeah,
yeah, like and it's like not everybody with a mental illness is gonna have that certain skill that they're really good at. Like there is a correlation between mental illness and creativity, but that doesn't mean that every single person with mental illness is gonna be creative. Some people with mental illness are more analytical than they are creative.
yeah.
Like, but yeah. Is there anything else you want to say about this topic?
I think we can move on to the videos now.
All right, we'll go to the videos. All right, the first video is about this. It's a video. Are you familiar with the Friendly Atheist?
Yeah, he's not so friendly.
Yeah, yeah. He did a video talking about this Christian school's pastor cancels Autism Awareness Week, calling it demonic.
Yeah,
So there's a Christian
Can you
school
hear it?
yeah,
You can.
in
Yeah.
Florida, and they were going to do something really nice and celebrate Autism Awareness Week.
First off, just to put it out there, I do think what that Christian school was gonna do was a good thing. I think more churches should do like something where they like raise awareness of like not just autism but other mental illness. So already off the bat, I think this church is doing something good. But like, wait till you see how the pastor responds.
okay.
And I want to show you this poster that this Christian school, it's Trinity Christian Academy in Florida. This is the poster they put up. And let's zoom in on this and look at this because it's really nice. It is. It's really nice. Autism Awareness and Acceptance Week, the beginning of April. Very nice. And look at what they were asking the kids to do at this school. On Tuesday, it's World Autism Awareness Day. Show your support and wear blue. All right, fine, whatever. On Wednesday, what's your passion? One characteristic of autism is to show incredible focus and passion when interested in a topic. Dress up to show something you love. That sounds very nice too. Thursday, Magnificent Mind. Wear a fun hat or wild hair to celebrate how amazing.
Doesn't this remind you of like Spirit Week in school?
I didn't have a spirit week in school.
Oh, you didn't?
Oh, I thought you meant like ghosts and goblins and Halloween. No, you mean something like for the schools, like to celebrate how like you're part of the school type of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's similar to that, but I guess this guy, I agree with you. This did sound fine and dandy at first, like all this stuff. I don't see how this is demonic.
I don't see how it's demonic either. I think this is a pretty cool idea.
It is that God created our minds to work in unique and wonderful ways. All right. I mean, I'm not for the God talk there, but whatever. It's a Christian school. They're doing their thing. And the last thing here, let me remove myself so you could see it. Tie-dye for neurodiversity. To celebrate the beauty and the diverse spectrum of the human mind, wear tie-dye. Again, all very nice things to do. And why are they doing that? More than anything else, why would public schools do something like this too? They're doing it because, especially younger kids, they don't know much about autism. I mean, older people don't know much about autism unless maybe you have it. And it's very easy to make fun of people for thinking differently, acting differently, because you don't understand what's going on.
True. Like a lot of people like with autism or any kind of mental illness, we tend to get like picked on and made fun of because people don't understand what we're going through. And like so when an organization like this school does like an awareness week, it's supposed to be something to educate people so that they don't bully people with mental illness. Like I seen a study one time that said people with mental illness are more likely to be attacked in the street, or no, people with mental illness are more likely to be victims of a violent crime rather than being perpetrators of a violent crime. And like so the purpose of an awareness week like this is to educate people to hopefully like lessen or prevent mentally ill people from being attacked or made fun of. Do you have any thoughts, Joe? Hello? You there, Joe? Hello? Hold on. Oh, you there?
Yeah, sorry. It cut. You froze, and then I tried to get back on, and then it said I wasn't part of the broadcast for a while. But I was seeing you, and I don't know. I don't know what this church's problem is. But at the same time, though. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just saying the purpose of an awareness week like this is to hopefully prevent mentally ill people from being bullied or picked on. It's supposed to raise awareness and education. Like I saw a study one time that said people with mental illness are more likely to be victims of a violent crime than to be perpetrators of a violent crime. So I think it's a wonderful thing what this church is trying to do to raise awareness on autism to prevent those kids from being bullied.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, autistic kids in particular go through a lot of bullying from children who are meaner than other children, and
exactly.
My not to pry into my fiance's life too much, but she has borderline autism, and she went through so much in her life, and I was kind of like her knight in shining armor, like getting out of her, like she was cutting herself and going through terrible times, and until I got her in my life, and then I helped her led her to the Lord as well. So having someone like that in my life makes me feel like I have purpose when I didn't feel like I had purpose for so long. So
praise God for that.
Going on there. And if doing silly things like wearing tie-dye, wacky hair, whatever, if that helps kids become more familiar with autism and the spectrum and understanding that, people might think differently for reasons that are outside their control, because it's a genetic thing, like that's nice. Maybe it leads to more awareness, obviously. Maybe it helps decrease bullying. I know a lot of people who are autistic who would really benefit by the idea of their friends and their classmates knowing a little more about where they're coming from. So really nice thing that this school was trying to do. And as you saw, that was the poster they put up, I guess, in the building or sent out in late March so that kids could dress up or do whatever they want to do that week. Unfortunately, Trinity did not celebrate Autism Awareness and Acceptance Week because instead, the pastor at this school, his name is Matt Baker, he sent out a letter to parents and staff basically telling them, we are absolutely not doing this because he believes Autism Awareness Week, not autism, mind you, but Autism Awareness Week is demonic.
First off, I don't understand what's so demonic about raising awareness of a mental health issue. Like, I mean, he's going to go on to say that anything that exalts itself above the name of Christ is demonic, but I don't think raising awareness of mental health is raising mental health above the name of Christ. Like this channel is called Christ-centered mental health. Like, because I'm talking about mental health issues from a Christian perspective, and I always keep in mind that Christ is the most important thing to keep my eyes on, not my mental health. So, and I'm pretty sure this church is doing the same thing. Like they know Christ is supreme, Christ is preeminent, and he's the one we should be honoring at all times. But this church wants to raise awareness of autism in their church to prevent autistic people from being bullied and made fun of. How is that demonic?
They probably have that right-wing conservative outlook where it's psychology is phony baloney. I mean, and they're just conning kids into taking unnecessary medication when they can just everyone goes through stuff like this. And I think that's very cold-hearted for anyone to think that. And a lot of Christians take that stance, and we're one of we're like on the fringe on the Christian side where we don't believe in that. We believe in psychology helps people with their mental disorders, and when you add Christ to that, it's just it makes it so much better because I agree with the new what are the I always
the nouthetic counselors.
I agree that with them on the notion that without Christ, this stuff is kind of useless, and that goes with anything, without Christ.
Well, yeah, I agree. Like, I actually, in my book on faith and mental illness from a biblical perspective, I have 2 chapters. One chapter is called Psychology and Psychiatry Are Gifts from God, and then the very next chapter is Psychology and Psychiatry Are Slavery Without God. So I agree with you that apart from Christ, psychology and psychiatry is bad. But with Christ, psychology and psychiatry can be gifts from God.
Yeah. And you can't just give up on the first med, and you have to find the right one. So you
exactly.
Can't, if you're not successful with your first medication, you can't just give up on it entirely, because if you try to wing it by yourself, you might have a difficult time. I know some people that are winging it and they're doing okay right now, but who knows in the future? I pray for them, but they said that their lithium made them toxic and whatnot, and it says, okay, if you feel that way, then God bless you. But I know my medication has been a blessing for me, though.
Like you said, you can't just give up on the first medication you take, though. Otherwise, you're never going to get stable. It took me over 10 years to find the right medication for me, but I'm thankful that I did find the right medication.
Yeah, I was taking, my timeline was around that too. I was taking the same one for a long time, and I didn't make a correlation on some of the side effects I was taking with my meds because it made me able to sleep. So I thought it was a good thing, but there was some other. It was Zyprexa was awful, man. In Vegas,
yeah.
It's not even
I like my Zyprexa actually.
Well, I was taking 20 milligrams a day, bro. That's
how much I'm taking. That's how much I'm taking right now.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, I guess it affects everybody different.
That's his word.
Yeah.
And he also said that recognizing autism like this, celebrating it in a way, amounts to idolatry. I'm going to show you the.
First off, I don't think Autism Awareness Week is celebrating autism. I think it's just raising awareness and educating people on autism. That's not celebrating it. So it's definitely not idolatry.
No, not. Yeah, the thing is though, even though I agree with conservatives on most social issues, when it comes to mental health, I agree with the liberals mostly. So,
well, I've always said this, that liberals have a better understanding of mental health than conservatives do. That's why, if I want to find a mental health place that will help me better, I go to like liberal cities because liberal cities have better mental health services than conservative cities.
Yeah. Is there a
Email that he sent
conservative
here.
city?
What?
I know there's rural areas that are conservative, but are there any like metro monopolists, whatever that word is, cities that are conservative? Aren't they all liberals pretty much?
Yeah, they probably are.
Yeah.
All right, he's getting into a letter now. You gotta like wait till you see what this guy what this pastor says.
Okay.
And we're gonna read through this for a bit. Good afternoon, Trinity Christian Academy. I would like to address the recent cancellation of this week. I'm going to scroll down, blah, 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 blah. Here's what he basically says. Last year, when he was the interim head of school, they did this. He said, I allowed it to happen because it was already promoted and planned. After allowing it, I shared my concerns. I shared we would not be doing this going forward. You can imagine my surprise and concern when I heard this initiative is happening again. And I'm going to scroll down here to where he gets to the point. Here we go. Check out this bit up at the top here. The word Christian means like Christ, and it was given to the followers of Christ because they acted like Jesus. Remember those bracelets from the 2000s that asked WWJD? Oh, this is the best part. If Jesus Christ led Trinity, their school, would he have an autism awareness week?
Let's answer that question. If Jesus led this Christian school, would he have I think he would. I think he would have an autism awareness week.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think Jesus would be against raising awareness of mental health for the sake of educating people on mental health and so that people with mental illness won't be bullied anymore.
Well, knowing Jesus and what he can do, I would imagine he would heal those children, and they, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Well, even though Jesus didn't heal everyone that came across him, so Jesus might heal some of them, but then there might be others that he would just tell them to just trust in his grace.
Right.
Of course not. Why? Because anything that exalts itself above the name of Christ should be brought down.
Yeah, he's saying anything that exalts itself above the name of. How is holding an autism awareness week exalting autism above the name of Christ? I'm failing to see how he's making that case.
Like, I'm not certain about all churches, but most churches I'm fully aware of, don't they have some kind of like, let's say 4th of July or Valentine's Day kind of thing where, so that's not exalting some kind of pagan holiday over Christ. It's just celebrating some kind of a goofy holiday. So
exactly. So what's the difference between celebrating the 4th of July and then having an autism awareness week? It's pretty much the same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Those autistic kids ruin it for everybody with their me, attention seeking, whatever. Also, anything that teaches our children to have their identity in anything other than Christ is idolatry and demonic.
Well, I do agree. Like, if you find your identity in anything but Christ, that is idolatry and demonic. However, acknowledging that you have a mental illness like autism or schizoaffective disorder like us or bipolar, that's not finding your identity in your mental illness. That's just it's like someone who has diabetes. They're going to say, I'm a diabetic, but they don't find their identity in their diabetes. They find their identity in Christ. Just like someone with mental illness, we acknowledge that we have this struggle, but our identity is still found in Christ.
Yeah, that's why I consider myself a Christian schizoaffective.
Exactly. Yeah, me too. Repeat myself just so I am not quoted out of context. Any philosophy, teaching, or program that teaches our precious children that their identity is found in anything other than Christ is idolatry and demonic. Period. Let's just pause there for a moment. So apparently, if there was like Asian American Awareness Week, and we're going to talk about famous Asian people because we don't really do that in school a lot, or there's an African American Awareness Week, or whatever, Italian American Awareness
I'm
Week.
not gonna lie. I would love it. I would have loved it if in school they had an Asian American Awareness Week. But that's just besides the point.
All
Yeah,
of
but
that, this guy says,
do we
What?
really have to do an awareness week for every single group out there? I mean, I guess we could, but
Yeah.
is that necessary? Do we really need to like segregate people and do stuff like that? And
Well,
I don't know.
I don't think it's segregating people. I think it's just
Well,
raising awareness.
I know for a fact if we did everybody, white people would
Well,
probably be like, "What
I
about
think it's
us?" And
just-
then if they did
I
white
think it's-
people, the left would go
I think
nuts.
I think it's just raising awareness to let people know that these people exist. That's
Of
all
course.
it's doing.
That's fine. That's fine. You can have courses and whatnot, and then show everybody's culture and whatnot. I'm not against that, but I just thinking, I don't know. I don't even know what I'm saying.
is demonic. It's evil because how dare you identify as anything other than Christian? And I gotta say,
I don't think I agree with the pastor on one thing. Like, we should find our identity in Christ first and foremost. But like I said, acknowledging that you have other things isn't idolizing those things. Like, you can acknowledge that you have a mental illness. You can acknowledge that, like, you're white, black, Asian, Latino. You can acknowledge that you're a male. Or a female. You can acknowledge these things without it being idolatry. Now, I do admit, if you start placing these things above the name of Christ, above being a Christian, then that's when it becomes a problem.
Yeah, right. No, I find it interesting. This guy calls himself the friendly atheist, but the way he's mocking the author of this little article here is like the way he's like, presenting how he speaks and stuff is like, that's not very friendly in my opinion. And the way he's like going out of his way to make him sound silly and whatnot. I mean, I know it's theatrics and stuff, but
I think the pastor is doing a good job at making himself sound silly.
Yeah, I know, but he can say it without the arrogant tone. But that's just how this guy is. I'm aware.
He is being condescending, but at the same time, though, this pastor doesn't deserve any respect.
Yeah, I don't agree. I'm just thinking, like, would a friendly atheist really? I guess this is friendly on the atheist standard. I guess. This is
I don't think this pastor deserves any kind of respect, anyways, because he's making a fool out of himself, and he's making a fool out of Christians.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, because people are gonna see this pastor and they're gonna say, "Wait, Christians think Autism Awareness Week is demonic," and then they're gonna like not want to be. They're not gonna like us. I mean, they already don't like us to begin with, but then they're gonna see this and they're definitely not gonna like us.
Well, judging from one small church and judging us all and putting us eggs in one basket is kind of unfair. Like, I don't.
But that's what they're gonna do.
Yeah, right.
I see it all the time. Like, one small church can do something, and then all of a sudden they lump us all together with. I mean, look at what they do with Westboro Baptist Church. Westboro Baptist Church is a small church that's very loud and belligerent, and people lump us in with them.
I think Westboro Baptist Church is 100% correct. I'm just kidding.
No, you don't.
Hey, like, come on, I'm not picking on white people, but for a white male who, as far as I know, doesn't struggle with any sort of disorder or disability, for that guy to say, hey, what's with all of the rest of you saying, let's draw awareness to reasons people might be picked on, discriminated against, mocked? Why are you trying to draw awareness to that? How dare you? That must be like DEI. And so he just calls it demonic. Like, what the hell? And then it gets worse. Let me show you more in this letter here. The world, in its rejection and hatred of Christ, like, my dude, we don't think about you this much, often devises
Yeah, your whole
programs
channel's
such as
based on
autism
stuff like
awareness,
that.
in quotation marks, and cultural figures like the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus,
He's
spelled like the
okay. So this pastor is relating Autism Awareness Week to be on the same level as the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus. Like,
No, that's pretty ridiculous because I mean you grow up to a certain point in your life where you realize that Easter Bunny and Santa Claus is not real. Everyone goes through that, right? But
yeah,
once you get older, there's certain people who realize these mental disorders are real, and then there's certain people that are skeptical of it, but that doesn't make it's not real. There's a whole science behind all this stuff, you know.
exactly.
It's
There's a
not
whole
like
science. There's a whole science behind mental health. Like,
yeah,
so to equate it to being on par with Easter Bunny and Santa Claus, that's not only offensive, but it's also highly ignorant too.
yeah.
Like,
I
I'm
mean,
sorry, like you got on the friendly atheist for being condescending towards this guy, but I'm not gonna lie, I have no respect for this pastor.
yeah,
Like, if he,
he's pretty harsh. Yeah, I
yeah,
agree.
I have no respect for him. Like, I mean, so the friendly atheist can be as condescending as he wants to be, because if this guy was my pastor, like, I would get up and leave his church right away after I
Yeah,
saw this letter.
I wouldn't go to this church either. You know,
Yeah,
it would be just imagine if his church had like there was a guy who went there and his son was autistic and he has to hear this all the time, and like he had something to look forward to, and now he can't see it because now he thinks his son is demonic and not really autistic. You know, for like that's pretty bad,
exactly.
you know?
That is messed up. It's sad.
Yeah,
the Tim Allen movie and not normally. Why do we do autism awareness and Easter and Santa? To get the benefits of his teachings without acknowledging Jesus as the ultimate authority. Because as we all know, in December, you never hear about Jesus. No one celebrates Jesus around Easter. You've never heard that word before because you're all Christ haters. These initiatives imply that Jesus alone is insufficient, and we fail to recognize just how deeply they have permeated into our daily lives.
Okay,
Like,
first off, I don't understand how recognizing that there's autistic people among us, how recognizing that there's mentally ill people among us, how is that teaching that Christ is insufficient? Like, this guy, this pastor, he's just talking out of his butt. Like,
yeah,
just because you acknowledge that mentally ill people exist does not mean that Jesus is insufficient. Like, you can believe that Christ is sufficient and that he's enough and that he's supreme and he's preeminent, and you can also acknowledge that there are mentally ill people around. Like, man, this guy, like, I'm sorry, I'm getting annoyed with this guy. Like,
yeah. It's unfortunate that I think the majority of Christians have like this kind of attitude regarding mental health. You know, it's kind of sad.
yeah,
It's, you
it
know,
is sad. Like, this is why
well,
I feel like this ministry is so important, because so many Christians have such a negative view on mental health. If
yeah,
if
we're gonna
Christians
start.
didn't have if Christians didn't have this kind of negative attitude towards mental health, I don't think there would be any need for this ministry. But since Christians have this attitude, this ministry is very much needed.
Look, the way I look at it is this: if you're mentally ill and you're searching to find Christ, or if you're already a Christian, this could be a very beneficial for you. This channel and our ministry in general, because
Exactly.
we're not alone, and if we can help you combat the ones that are against you, you know, that are in our Christian faith. So you know we can help you.
Exactly.
So you know,
Exactly.
man, this guy is a buzzkill at Easter. Like, Easter Bunny, are you picking up Easter eggs in a hunt? Like, this is demonic children who are 6. Like, I don't know. So that was the letter Matt Baker sent out to everyone at this school, explaining why they would not be celebrating Autism Awareness Week. And by the way, if Autism Awareness Week is supposed to be demonic, then hail Satan. Okay. So according to the Palm Beach Post newspaper, this little email here, he sent that out on March 30th. And he said, look, I allowed it in the past, but I'm not doing it again this year. Maybe that poster went up without his knowledge, and now he saw it, and he's like, how dare we do that? There were a lot of people who were very, very mad about this, and including parents at the school whose kids have autism, and they were not happy with this. And I had to look in like three
Can you
different...
imagine going to this church? You have imagine this. You go to this church, you have a son or a daughter that has autism, and you're getting kind of happy because the church is going to have an autism awareness week. So you're like getting involved in that because you think it's a good way to get your kid to not be picked on anymore because they're raising awareness that there's people out there like your kid. And then all of a sudden the pastor comes out and says, nope, you're not doing Autism Awareness Week because that's demonic. Like, how would you feel as a parent hearing your pastor say that Autism Awareness Week is demonic when you have an autistic kid?
Well, me personally, even if I love the church's doctrine and I agreed with like the vast majority of what they said and I really got along with the people there, I would leave.
Yeah, I would leave too. Like even if the church was doctrinally sound and I got along with everyone, I would leave too, and I would make it known why I was leaving too. I'll tell them because you're the pastor just insulted my child, so I'm not going to stick around for that.
Right.
Like,
I agree.
News articles to find their quotations, but you got to see how mad these parents are here. Check out this one. This is from the Palm Beach Post. Vanessa Francisco, whose adult son has autism and whose daughter attends the school, called the note disgraceful, disrespectful, and ignorant. And she fired back at Baker and asked the school's board of directors to condemn his message. That email felt like an unprovoked attack on my family, a slap to the face I never saw coming, and from our pastor of all people. How can we continue to allow someone so grossly ignorant to preach to our children, to educate our children in any capacity? His hatred for the autistic and disabled community is so enormously obvious that I cannot stand by and just accept what he tells me.
you know what? I totally get where this mother is coming from, because when I first heard this story, it really got me angry too. Because like this pastor, I think honestly, if this pastor is still pastor that school, whatever, he needs to step down because he's not fit to be a pastor.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of times, not a lot of times, I'll say few and far between churches, the pastor is very cold-hearted. Like he's not showing the love of Christ and the mercy of Christ, It's like zeal and nothing else, and that's not
like
a church I want to be a part of.
Exactly. I wouldn't want to be a part of that church either.
Damn. And that's just one parent. Here's another one. This is from a different local news report about this whole kerfuffle. Andrea Gallick is a mother of two children, a 9-year-old daughter and a 6-year-old son who attend Trinity Christian Academy. And check out what she said. Gallick said she was left in tears and she'll be pulling her kids out of the school.
Good. That's
the
good.
email comes and I feel like my heart's beating because not once but twice. He says that wearing this title of autism is demonic. And my mouth was on the floor. I'm offended as a Christian because I feel that he is using the Bible for his own interpretation. And his interpretation is offensive, not just to my son, but to any child, adult afflicted with autism. Breaks my heart. It breaks my heart. And good for her for pulling her kid from the school. Yeah. There was one more that I found.
That's good. I'll stop the video there. You have any final thoughts about that video?
Well, at the end there, I was proud of that Christian woman, and even Mr. Angry Atheist agree with her. So
Mr. Angry Atheist, yeah, like I was proud of that woman too. Like it's like honestly, I hope that all people at that church end up leaving that church, because that church, if they have that guy still as our pastor, that church needs to be shut down.
Yeah.
Like, it needs to be shut down. All right, so the next video, this one I found pretty interesting. It's called "You Can't Logic Your Way Out of Depression." I know your story and you know my story, but both of us have dealt with depression in our life. Like, so this might be interesting. This guy's a psychiatrist, by the way. I think we reviewed one of his videos before.
Yeah.
All today about why logic is not effective at treating depression.
Why can't I logic my way out of depression? First off, I wanna know what your thoughts before we get into this video. What are your thoughts about that? Like, why do you think we can't logic our way out of depression?
Because it's more of emotion based more than intellect based, I guess. So
Yeah,
I don't think I think it's more feelings and the feelings of despair, and I don't think doing math equations or figuring out something, I don't think that's gonna really help out too, so
that well, I think when you're depressed, okay, so logic comes from your mind. Well, if you're depressed, that the problem is your mind. So if the problem is already in your mind, then your mind can't get you out of that problem. There has to be another way to get you out of that problem.
right.
Yeah.
And this is a really important problem because a lot of people out there who struggle with depression or even subclinical depression, where they don't necessarily have a diagnosis, will struggle to pull themselves out of it. They'll analyze their situation and they'll recognize, okay, I need to do this or I need to do this, but they can't seem to, despite all the logic, bring themselves out of it. And on the flip side, we also have something incredibly scary, which is that sometimes when people are really, really depressed, or even things like suicidal, they're actually really logical about it. They sort of reach the logical conclusion that actually there's no reason for me to live right now, right? Because
No, that's very interesting, because I know the times where I was suicidal, I was thinking there was no reason to live anymore, and I was very I was very logical in that, because I lost all hope, and I felt like if there's no hope in this life, then I might as well just end it. Like because, and that's actually the problem I see with atheism. Like I said before, if I was to ever become an atheist, I'd probably just take a bullet to my brain, because there would be no reason to go on living.
Yeah, the reason why I became an atheist is because I was trying to convince myself there was no God in hell, and so I could commit suicide, and so it didn't really exactly work. But that's because there's no such thing as atheists.
Exactly, there's no such thing as atheists.
I've done the analysis. I don't have a bright future. Generally speaking, day to day, I suffer a lot. I'm in a lot of pain. The only bright points in my life are like these dopaminergic activities like gaming or porn or whatever. But like, there's objectively no reason for me to be alive right now. And this is what's really challenging.
That's common. Like, a lot of depressed people, they like, I agree with them. A lot of depressed people are thinking very logically, because like they look back on their life and they say, what's the point of living? And that's why having a Christian understanding of life is so important, because when you are a Christian, you realize that there is hope at the end of the tunnel, that you're not suffering for no purpose. You're suffering because you're being conformed in the image of Christ, and that God, and you know that God is going to work out all things for your good. And that, when you have that knowledge, it helps you to get up in the morning and to keep going, keep pressing forward. Without that foundation, though, there really is no reason for life. Like, without that foundation, like, you might as well not go on living.
Right. What would you say to someone who's going has a they're a secularist and they don't have Christ, but they have a good, like, they got a lot of women and they got boats and cars and an exciting life. And what would you say to someone like that who they're fulfilled in a superficial way, but they don't have Jesus?
I'll say the same thing that King Solomon said. It's all vanity. All that stuff that you have, it's all going to be gone the next day. You have it now, but it could disappear the very next day. So it's all vanity. You're chasing after the wind.
Yeah.
Challenging is if you try to talk to these people, you'll oftentimes find that their logic is actually really sound. And even in the cases when it's not really sound, you can try to convince them otherwise, but it seems like you sometimes hit a brick wall. And if you're struggling in this way, you may have noticed that you may try to argue against yourself, but your mind always comes to the same conclusion.
This kind of reminds me, I have a good friend of mine. She's a very good friend. She's like a sister to me, but she's been dealing with depression since she was 4 years old. And it was this very severe depression. And when I talk to her, the stuff she says, she really thinks about what she's going through, and and the stuff she says is very logical. Like, she's able to make logical connections between her experiences and her feelings, and she's it's not that she's being illogical. She's actually being very rational, but she has a worldview that is very bleak and hopeless. So that's why she needs Christ, because without Christ, she's just going to continue with that bleak and hopeless worldview.
Yeah. It's not to say that Christians can't become depressed, but depression without Christ is a lot more bleak than one with them.
Exactly, yeah.
And talk a little bit about, first of all, understanding what the relationship between depression and logic is, and also why it is that logic sort of doesn't work, and what the real problem is with depression. Hey there, thanks for watching, and I'm glad these videos have been helpful. A lot of times I'll read the comments and see people ask us and how to create lasting behavioral change. So if you're ready to talk today is the relationship between logic, depression, and even IQ. And what we'll sort of discover is actually a little bit bizarre. First of all, not only is it that logic doesn't really work for depression, but the more intelligent you are or the more logical you are, there's a good chance that your depression will actually get worse. Not only does it not work, it's actually fuel for the fire. So
what do you think about that? The more intelligent you are, the more the worse your depression is.
Well, that's probably why I think life is so terrible and I'm depressed all the time, because I'm so smart.
Yeah. When I first heard that, it reminded me, it says hold on, let me pull it up real quick in my Bible, because when he said that, it reminded me of this verse. Hold on, let me get it real quick. Let's see, it's right here. It's in Ecclesiastes. It says, Ecclesiastes chapter 1 verse 18, for much wisdom is much vexation, and he who increases knowledge increases sorrow.
Yeah. Wow.
So King Solomon said that thousands of years before this guy said it. But
Solomon was a good psychiatrist, apparently.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's start by understanding the relationship between IQ and depression, because we tend to think about IQ as a positive thing, right? And this is sort of a situation where, generally speaking, the higher your IQ is, the easier life becomes. That's the way we sort of think about it, is that it's unilaterally a positive thing. But if we look at studies on IQ and depression, we discover something that's actually really bizarre, which is the higher your IQ is, the more likely you are to be depressed. So if you look at the general population, about 9.5% of people are depressed. There are some studies where researchers have looked at the top 2% of people in terms of IQ. So they took the smartest 2% of people in the world and they assessed how depressed they are. And if you're in the top 2% of people, you have a 36.6% chance to be depressed.
If you're in the top 2% of IQ, like you have a 36.6% of being depressed.
Right.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
I
is that saying ignorance is bliss? Like, people that don't know very much about everything, that's why they're so happy because, ignorance is
yeah,
bliss.
exactly. Like ignorance truly is bliss. Like when I first heard this, I was like, so does that mean the happier you are, the dumber you are?
Yeah. Right.
Talking about a fourfold increase in risk of depression. And that's like absolutely insane, right? Like how on earth does that work? Even though these studies have some methodological problems, there's some really interesting supporting evidence on sort of understanding why is it that smarter people are more likely to be depressed. So there's a series of trials that really look at something called insight, which is your awareness of what your problems are. So what they sort of discovered is that if you have a debilitating neurological disease, like let's say you've got like ALS, right, which is Lou Gehrig's disease, or it's like a degenerative nerve disorder. If you've got Parkinson's or something like that, if you get diagnosed with something that's like really bad, like cancer, the awareness that you have, your ability to analyze and accurately assess your situation correlates with suicidality. So the greater your insight is, the more aware you are, the more
I
suicidal you
just
are.
thought of something. This is kind of a little bit off topic, but like I was because he mentioned cancer, and I was like, this is something I think about a lot. Well, let me ask you this: if you ever got cancer, would you try and fight it, or would you let it take you out?
In the past, when I was single, and speaking of depression, this correlates with the subject we're talking. I was actually praying to God for cancer, actually.
Really?
Hoping for cancer. I was like telling myself in my head, like, if my doctor ever said, like, hey, Joseph, I hate to tell you this, but you have cancer, I would probably jump up and down in enjoyment.
That's how I felt too when I was single. Like I was in the same boat actually. Like I was hoping I did get cancer because then I would, and I would actually tell people that if I ever got cancer, I would rejoice
Yeah.
because I told numerous people that when I was single and depressed. But like now that I'm married, I don't. If I ever got cancer, I probably would fight it. Like
Yeah. Now I'm not thinking about myself and my eternal, reward when I die. Now I'm thinking about I gotta live as long as I can for my fiance that I'm gonna marry.
exactly, that's what I'm thinking too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are also situations where they've looked at diseases like schizophrenia, and they've also found that like when you have people with schizophrenia, the more aware of the problem they are, the more damaging the situation actually is, and the more suicidal they become.
That's interesting. I would like to see a study about people with schizophrenia and suicide rates because what he just said, I thought was people with schizophrenia have a better insight into their condition, and it tends to make them more depressed.
Yeah.
Like I get that because like when I like sometimes when I think about like my schizoaffective disorder and I think about how much of a struggle it is, while I do acknowledge that it's a gift from God, I also at the same time I have to acknowledge that it's a real struggle, and sometimes it brings me down when I think about how much of a struggle it is.
Yeah. It's definitely a burden, like
Yeah,
it's a daily, every day. It's like a constant thing we have to deal with in our mind, like it's never goes away.
yeah, exactly.
So that sounds kind of weird, but like let's kind of dive into a little bit of like why is that? Why is it that IQ can worsen depression and kind of like worsen suicidality and things like that? So let's start by understanding first of all, what do we mean by logic? We start with a set of assumptions, and then we take those assumptions and then we can run some kind of analysis and then we come to a conclusion. And generally speaking, the smarter you are, the more logical you will be, the more analytical you will be, and the more faith you will have in your analytical process. Because if you're smart and you are very good at logic, it becomes a useful tool, right? So we use logic to solve problems in life. And if logic comes to a particular
This kind of reminds you brought up a beautiful mind. What he's saying here kind of reminds me of John Nash because if you know anything about John Nash's story, he had a lot of faith in his analytical ability. Like there was a part in that movie where he was talking to the psychiatrist and he was saying, there has to be some way I can overcome this schizophrenia without medication. And the psychiatrist said, you can't logic your way out of schizophrenia. And he was like, why not? He's like, because the problem is already the problem is your mind.
Mhm.
As John Nash, he has so much faith in his intellect that he couldn't see that his mind is the problem.
Right.
Like,
It's a blessing and a curse.
exactly.
Trust that conclusion because it tends to work. So if I'm trying to figure out, okay, how do I get a better grade? This is what I need to do. I can kind of logic it out and figure out what the right move is. If I'm having trouble at work, I can run through an analytical process and I can figure things out. And the higher your IQ is, the more likely you are to become dependent on logic. Now, let's take a look at depression. So there's a lot of really interesting neuroscience which helps us understand like what goes on in the brain of someone who's depressed. And as we understand what happens in the brain of someone who's depressed, we'll start to see how that can impact logic and even hijack it. So the first thing to understand about depression is I sort of think about it as the autoimmunity of mental illness. So if we look at autoimmune conditions, we have this thing called the immune system. And the purpose of the immune system is to fight off infections, right? These are the soldiers of our body. In autoimmunity, what happens is these soldiers start attacking us. So if you look at things like allergies, this is a situation where there's a benign particle, which we're inhaling, and our immune system is like, this is the enemy, let's attack it. In other cases of autoimmunity, we will actually attack our own tissues and cause things like rashes or inflammation or things like that. So what happens in depression? What happens in depression is our brain gets turned against us. So this is what's really terrifying is the stronger our brain is, the worse the depression is. Because if you have a really powerful logical fallacy, but something in your brain has changed to always blame you, or look at the negative or feel guilt.
That makes sense. Like I know when I get depressed, my brain is literally my worst enemy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like when I get depressed, like my brain, I can't. When I'm depressed, I can't trust my own thoughts.
Yeah. Whether I'm in a manic state or a depression, my brain is literally my worst enemy. You know, like I tend to think, like harming myself more than harming others. I don't like seeing other people hurt. You know, unless someone really infuriates me, I don't like to see other people hurt. But myself, I'm not really a person that's really scared of, even though I'm scared of heights, I can handle roller coasters and stuff like that and whatnot. And like heights, that's like one of my only fears. Like I'm not even scared to death and that's only because of Jesus Christ, because I'm looking forward to heaven. So death does not give me the heebie-jeebies like it would someone else who doesn't know what's going to happen in the next world, like a Christian would. So,
Exactly.
Well,
it's interesting. I'm with you there. Like my mania, when I get manic, I can't trust my thoughts. When I'm depressed, I can't trust my thoughts either. Like especially when I'm manic. When I get manic, it's hard. But when I get manic, I tend to I can't tell what's real and what's fantasy when I get manic.
Yeah.
When I'm depressed, it's like my brain turns everything against me.
Yeah.
Or shame or whatever, it's going to leverage that brain against you. And this is why it's so hard to kick. So how does the brain actually do that? Let's understand a couple of things. The first thing in depression is we see that there is amygdalar hyperreactivity. What does that mean? So we have this part of our brain that senses threats and sort of detects negative things. When the amygdala is hyperreactive, it does a couple of interesting things. It changes our perceptions. So if there's a benign stimulus, if someone says, hey, I'm busy today, sorry, I can't meet, in the depressed brain, the amygdala being hyperreactive will interpret that in a negative way.
I have a when I get depressed, I have a tendency to do that. Like when I get depressed, someone can say something to me very simple. Like they'll say, "Hey, I'm busy. I can't talk right now." And my brain will say, "Oh, this person hates me or he's mad at me." And then I start to like, because I've been known to like if someone doesn't talk to me for like a couple days, I start like, and I get depressed. I start to worry. Okay, this person's mad at me, and I've been known to like go to people and say, "Hey, are you mad at me? Did I say something that upsets you?"
Yeah,
And
the same thing.
yeah, like that's interesting. Like, God, when I get depressed, I do that. My mind tells me stuff like that all the time.
Yeah, same here, man.
So it alters our perceptions. We become hypersensitive to negativity. So even if someone says, "Hey, thank you so much for inviting me. I loved the meal that you cooked. It turns out, though, I wasn't able to enjoy the alcohol because I don't drink because of my religious beliefs. But I loved the appetizers. The fish was delicious. You have a lovely place. I had such an amazing time." And so if you look at that sort of experience, this is a statement where someone is saying, 5 or 6 positive things and 1 negative thing. They're not really blaming you for it. They're like, "Hey, I'm sorry I wasn't able to enjoy this thing. I just don't drink."
So
And
basically, when you're depressed, you become hypersensitive and focus on the negatives.
Hmm. Yeah,
Like,
I notice like not that I'm in a depression mode, but when I cashier, I'm an all-purpose clerk when I work in retail, and I can do a little bit of everything. And when I
yeah,
cashier, I enjoy the majority of the customers because they're nice, but the ones that bother me really stand out, and it makes me not enjoy cashiering at all as the mean customers and difficult customers, so
you and me are kind of opposites on that because I love cashiering. Like that's one of my favorite jobs is working the cash because I like interacting with different customers. And
well, that's
like I
because
told
you don't got a high IQ.
I guess I don't know.
I'm
I took an IQ test and it said I
just,
have an above average IQ.
I'm
So,
just kidding. I'm just kidding.
but like no, I like talking to different customers, and like I always say, like the rude customers just give me funny stories to tell people later.
Yeah, but
Like,
you don't get depressed about it, man, because you don't got a high IQ.
yeah,
I'm just
okay.
kidding.
brain of a depressed person, that person will highlight that one piece of information. There actually is a cognitive filter that will knock out positive information and will actually amplify negative information. And this is all due to literally amygdala hyperreactivity. As signals are coming into our body and our brain is literally ignoring like 90% of them and just focusing on the 10 most negative. The second thing that we have to understand about the brain, and this comes a little bit more from Eastern psychology, it's validated by Western studies, but I think the Eastern perspective is easier to understand, is we have to understand the relationship between emotions and analysis. So oftentimes when we're feeling emotional, we will try to logic ourselves out of it. We'll try to analyze our way out of it. But there's a really interesting feature of the brain, which is that when we are highly emotional, our emotions hijack our logic. So if you look at a political debate, these people are emotionally charged and they are both convinced that they are logically correct 100% of the time, right? And the more emotionally charged the debate becomes, the more sure someone is that they are thinking logical. You may have engaged in
Yeah, I
arguments.
see that. Like you see that all the time in like political debates. Like people get so emotional in the political debates, and the more emotional they get, the more logical they think they're being. But people on the outside can see that they're not being logical; they're being emotional.
Yeah. Yeah, so like when even though it might it like say if you're getting in an argument with someone online, quote unquote, in a debate, if they insult you and call and give you an ad hominem attack, don't retaliate. It might hurt your pride that you let that go a little bit, but the thing is though, you're gonna look better in the if anyone reads that. So
Well, it's kind of like I had a recent experience not too long ago. I'm not going to mention the person, but I had an argument with someone, and I was being in perfect control of myself, but they started getting really angry, and eventually they called me stupid and dumb, And looking back on it, like I know they were just letting their emotions get the better of them. They don't really think I'm stupid, but like it's like, why do you have to get so emotional? Like,
Yeah.
With people where the person that you're arguing with is really, really emotional and not thinking clearly. But if you ask them, their perception is that they are perfectly logical. And let's be fair, if you're arguing, you're probably emotional and you're probably thinking that I am 100% right and they are 100% wrong. So we have to understand this really key relationship between emotions and analysis, which is that the more emotional we are, the more likely we are to actually hijack our analytical circuitry. And then the emotions are actually in control and they're pulling the strings of our logic. And we absolutely see this in.
That's enough of that. I'll put if anybody wants to watch this video later, I'll post a video in the description box so people can watch the rest.
Yeah, it was very analytical.
What do you think? Do you have any final thoughts about that?
Oh well, he made the case pretty well. I think there is a correlation between high IQ and depression. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I have certain aspects of my intelligence that are pretty high tuned and stuff like that. But at the same time, I got learning disabilities too. But I think IQ, that's pretty good. It's just that my memory and whatnot, and my vocab is decent and stuff. So you know, I'm not no stupid guy. You know, so
Yeah.
I got an online stream debate before. I got that off my bucket list. Not many people can say that.
Yeah, not many people can say that exactly. Like, it's definitely like I'm not. That's not to say I don't want people to think that if they don't struggle with depression, that must mean they're stupid. Like that doesn't like if you don't struggle with depression, that doesn't automatically mean that you're stupid. It's just like what he was saying was when you're depressed you have more insight into your circumstance and your emotions are causing you to be more analytical about your circumstances, but and he was just making the case that that's why you can't logic your way out of depression, because the problem is with your mind to begin with.
Right.
Yeah. But anyways, so do you have any other thoughts about that?
No, not too much.
All right, if you guys, I'll post a link to Joe's. I think I already did post a link to Joe's channel in the description box. So if you want to check his channel, it's called Christian Comedy and Debate. He makes a lot of politically incorrect videos on there. So he's pretty funny. So check him out. And thank you, Joe, for joining me for this week's episode of Christian Schizo Rants, and everybody. And thank you everyone who watched this, and thank you everyone who's going to watch the playback. Stay tuned for next week's episode of Christian Schizo Rants. It's Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But yeah, also please leave a like on this video and share this video with someone that you think needs to see this. And please subscribe to the channel. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, then I don't know what you're doing. Please subscribe to the channel. If you've been blessed by the Christ-Centered Mental Health Ministry, please consider supporting the ministry either through Patreon, Venmo, or Cash App. If you support $5 or more through Patreon or $10 or more through Cash App or Venmo, I'll send you a few copies of my books as a token of my gratification. All right. Thank you, everyone. God bless you and stay strong. All right. Bye.
Amen. Bye. Take it easy.